So after being away for a few weeks, the UFC is finally back in our lives, and I can honestly say I miss it, man. I miss the UFC. Nobody does it like the UFC, and they're doing us a little dirty, right? They're doing us a little dirty by starting off. They know we're desperate for fights. They've put us in a drought for the past couple weeks, and they're like, the hell with that, man. We're lining it up at the damn Apex. We're throwing together a random ass card, and they're gonna watch it anyway. And the UFC's damn right, man. We're gonna sit our asses down, and we are going to watch this card because it's been a few weeks without fights. And on the flip side, we got UFC 311 happening next week, so we have a stacked pay-per-view on the horizon after this. But the more I looked at this card, right, I had to wait to make this because there were some fights being shuffled around. They were looking for some opponents. Guys were pulling out left and right. So we actually have a pretty decent card here. There's actually some interesting matchups on this card, and I'll highlight those as we go here. But I started this towards the end of 2024. I'm not only going to give you a prediction, but I'm going to be bold and pick if I think there is going to be a finish and what round I can see that happening. And we're going to be doing that all through 2025 and moving forward. So just to have some more fun with these full card breakdowns and predictions, I will go ahead and put the time codes down below. So if there are specific fights you want to hear me discuss, there you go. Let's hop into this thing, man. Starting with our very first fight of the evening between Nurullo Aliev and Joe Solecki. Now, this was supposed to be Aliev versus Yanal Ashmouz, and Yanal pulled out of the fight. So I was kind of disappointed there because I thought Ashmouz, he's a guy that has a pretty good skill set, right? He's aggressive. He likes to move forward, throws big shots. And I was like, maybe that'll be a little bit of a test to really see where Nurullo is at. And to me, I don't have much of a breakdown for this, right? I think Nurullo Aliev, he's a problem in this weight class, right? He's 9-0, 24 years of age. He has outstanding grappling, very good control, very technical. And what stands out to me with him is he's not just a grappler, right? He's got very, very good control. You saw that against Rafael Alves, and then he goes out there against Josh Wick on the Contender Series. This was a very, very good performance. And like I said, very active with the ground and pound. Nasty elbows, good punches from the top. This is a dangerous guy. He's got good pressure. The way that he mixes everything together, he is a problem in this weight class. And off of Joe Solecki, I keep wanting to call him Joel, his last performance against Grant Dawson, that's where all the alarms are sounding, because Grant Dawson, he's got very good wrestling and he's got good grappling. He absolutely dominated Joe. He took him down, controlled him, and basically spent the entire fight in dominant positions. And when you look at Nurullo, what's going to be different in this matchup? I think Nurullo is fast. I think that in a way, he may be a little bit better than Grant Dawson in some areas. I know it's still a little bit early, but I think Aliev is going to go in there. He's going to have his way with Joe Solecki. If I'm Joe, you're taking this fight on short notice. Nobody's really expecting you to come in here and get the job done. Throw the kitchen sink at him if you want a shot to win this fight, because if you do not come in aggressive and you just sit on the back foot and you let Nurullo move forward, back you up against the fence and control you, there's no shot that Solecki is going to win this fight. So I think Nurullo Aliev goes in there. Maybe he could find a finish. Maybe he could get him out of there with some ground and pound. I know Joe Solecki is he's a game guy and he's a solid fighter, just not good enough. I think Aliev is that good. I think he's on the rise. This is a guy to have your eye on in this division. I have Nurullo Aliev getting a win by decision. Like I said, I could possibly see him winning by, getting a ground and pound or maybe a submission in there. Okay, moving on. This is an interesting fight here between Victoria Dudakova and Fatima Kline, because on the line, Fatima Kline, she's a huge favorite coming into this. And I think, at a minus 800, which is absolutely crazy, especially for a women's MMA fight. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's crazy to have, that wide of a spread. But what people see in this is Fatima Kline, she's got very good grappling, right? Very heavy experience when it comes to, grappling competitions and those kinds of things. And whenever you see those types of fighters come over into MMA, if they're able to develop a striking game, if they're able to mix everything together, they're going to be a real problem. And one of the things that does concern me is we saw the last time out for Fatima, she goes out there against Jasmine Judavicius, and I picked Jasmine to win this fight because the thing with Jasmine, the range, the way that she's able to kind of put things together causes a lot of problems for her opponents. And then she goes out there, prior to the UFC, and she's just rattling off wins, decisions, getting some finishes, and that's what you like to see, right? And then when you get that first, jump into the UFC, your first matchup, that's where we tend to see adversity strike. So that does concern me a little bit coming into this, but I think the grappling of Fatima Kline is going to be on display in this matchup because Victoria Dudakova, she's a solid fighter, right? She's got pretty good striking. She's got decent grappling. This fight right here, the split decision loss to Sam Hughes, This was just Sam Hughes coming in with a relentless, type of pace and just mixing everything together and just pushing a grueling type of pace that a good grappler can bring to the table. So if you're looking at that, I think that's where a lot of people see Fatima having a lot of success in this matchup. But before that, Dudakova was rattling off wins, right? You could see her going on a nice streak here, getting some finishes in here. So a kind of a similar path to Fatima Kline. But I think with Victoria having a little bit of the experience on her side, it's going to be interesting to see what she's able to do, having, maybe an extra bout or two inside the UFC. But I see what others see in this. I think Fatima Kline with the grappling, if she's able to push a pace, and when it comes to the grappling exchanges, I think that she is definitely better than Victoria Dudakova. But I would not be surprised if Victoria can stuff the takedowns and keep this fight on the feet. I absolutely see Victoria finding a way to get this one done. But I think Fatima, the way that she's able to mix the takedowns together, has outstanding jiu-jitsu. I think it's going to be a problem. From what we saw Sam Hughes do to Victoria, I think Fatima Kline comes in with a similar game plan, looks to push the pace, looks to mix in the grappling and try to change some things together. I think Fatima Kline is able to get this one done. I'm going to go by decision. Moving on. We have a bout going down in the light heavyweight division between Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Bruno Lopes. Now, this is a pretty lopsided fight in my opinion, right? I know that you can see, what people are thinking on here, 87%, picking Magomed, and I'm with you on that because I think when you talk about Magomed, he's a guy that's got good grappling, right? But he's also has good striking behind that, and we got to see that in that Bredson Ribeiro fight. We saw it on the Contender Series against Jose Medina, and that's just what we've seen from Magomed. Very well-rounded, very good wrestling, pretty solid striking on the feet. The one thing that does concern me about him, if someone's bold enough, if someone is able to put him on his back and keep him there, you will see him struggle. And I think that that's an area that someone may look to exploit as we go. I don't think Bruno Lopes is that guy. I think Bruno Lopes, coming off of a nice win over the Contender, or off the Contender Series, we see these guys come off of the Contender Series. It looks like everything's going their way, and then they get that big step up in competition in the UFC. Sometimes they get a layup from the UFC. Sometimes they get a game opponent. I think Magomed is a very game opponent. He's dangerous. He's good everywhere. He's got a well-rounded skill set. I think that in terms of the light heavyweight division, not a super stacked division anymore, right? And I think Magomed's one of those guys, if he can rattle off a couple impressive wins, can find himself in the rankings and start to kind of catapult his career a little bit because he is 31 years of age. That's not super old, not super young, kind of right in the middle. So, but I think Magomed, very well-rounded, good skill set. I think that he's going to look to mix everything together. I think he has success with the grappling. I think he's able to control this fight and dictate the pace. That's why I have him winning this one, and I'm going to go by decision. I think he's able to get it done against Bruno Lopes. Moving on, we have back to the women's. We have Ernesta Kareckaite versus Nicole Caliari. Now, this is an interesting fight to me because with Ernesta Kareckaite, she's got a swimming background, right? And whenever you talk about someone with a swimming background, the first thing that I tend to think of is cardio. Very, very relentless, just kind of able to dig deep and not necessarily get tired. And that's kind of what we see with Ernesta, right? She's got tall, she's tall for the weight class, 5'9", 71-inch reach, and she's usually able to utilize her reach advantage and keep people at the end of her strikes. But what we saw the last time out against Dion Barboza, we saw if you are able to crowd the space of Kareckaite, if you are able to mix things together and keep her guessing and not just allow her to sit on the outside and use that range, you can cause her a number of issues. Because in the fights previously, this is a perfect example here. Goes out there, gets a split decision over Carly Judice on the Contender Series, gets her first shot in the UFC, faces some adversity. So how does she bounce back after having a lot go her way and then coming into the UFC suffering her first loss? And then on the other side, you have Nicole Caliari. Look, she's coming off the Contender Series. Again, and there's a lot of these on these Apex Fight Night cards where you get these prospects who everyone's real high on. I think Nicole Caliari, she's good. She's got very, very good grappling. And I think if she's able to move forward, able to dictate the pace like I've seen in a lot of her fights going back and watching the tape, she has outstanding grappling. She understands how to close the distance safely. She understands how to get to the body lock. She understands how to mix things together. I think that she is actually able to find a submission in this fight because what concerns me with Ernesto, while she has the swimming background, she's very, athletic, she's got good striking, she's long and rangy, sometimes that can be an issue in the grappling. There's a lot more for somebody to grab a hold of, and someone as good with the grappling as Nicole, I think it causes a number of issues. But if Ernesta is able to stuff the takedowns, keep Nicole at range, and turn this into more of a kickboxing fight, I absolutely see a scenario to where Kareckaite can cruise to a decision or maybe find a finish of her own. But I think Nicole Caliari, I think her skill set is good. I think she's hitting her stride and finding her groove. I've been impressed with what I've seen thus far. I think she's able to find a submission in this matchup and get this one done. Moving on, we have Preston Parsons versus Jacoby Smith. Now, this was supposed to be Andreas Gustafsson versus Preston Parsons. I was really looking forward to that fight because Gustafsson, you could tell he's someone the UFC likes, right? He's got a fun style. He's more of kind of a brawler. He does have some technique. He's an all-around pretty good mixed martial artist, but he's gritty. He's durable. He's tough. He likes to move forward. He's the type of guy that when you throw him in there, you know that you're in for a firefight. And so this is a little bit of a different fight for Preston Parsons. But on the good side for Preston, he's a guy that was expecting a fight. He's a guy that was preparing. And what we've seen from Preston throughout his career, a little bit of up and down, right? He's 11-5 coming into this, loses to Oban Elliott by decision, but then before that, goes out there and gets a win over Matthew Semmelsberger, who, had some moments in the UFC, right? Semmelsberger has good power, likes to move forward, pretty well-rounded guy, so I think that that's actually a pretty solid win. Then he goes out there, loses a split decision to Trevin Giles, not a particularly great loss, right? And then goes out there, beats Evan Elder, and then he loses to Daniel Rodriguez by KO. So what you've seen with Preston Parsons, he's a guy that likes to move forward, likes to push the pace, likes to get in your face, likes to push you up against the fence and try to look for, for the grappling, land some shots in close. And I think that that is part of the reason that he's going to struggle in this fight, because I think with Jacoby Smith, this is a guy that's making his, UFC debut, goes in there on the Contender Series, gets a nasty ground and pound finish. And like I said, whenever you see these fighters from the Contender Series and they come into the UFC, it's a different ball game. And Preston Parsons, a guy that's got some experience, and I think that he's going to try to drag this fight out. I think he's going to try to wear on Jacoby Smith. But the problem with that is Jacoby Smith is a solid guy in this weight class. He was a smaller guy that is now kind of filled out into that welterweight frame, so he does have pretty good speed on his side. He has nasty power. He's got some big power in his hands. We've seen that before in Fury leading in to that Contender Series opportunity. He's just putting guys out, man. He's got nasty power, likes to move forward. He has very, very good grappling of his own. So I think that he is actually going to be the one that is able to dictate where this fight takes place. And I think that that's the problem for Preston Parsons in this matchup. I'm going to be bold and say Jacoby Smith is able to get a finish in the very first round over Preston Parsons. I think Preston's going to try to play that veteran role where he's going to try to weaponize his experience, move forward, try to tire out Jacoby Smith and drag this fight out since Smith is taking this on short notice. But I don't think Smith is one of those guys who drains himself so much to make the weight class to where you're going to see crazy effects, even though this is on short notice. So I think Jacoby Smith, I think he's good. I think he's got good grappling. He's got big power in his hands to where Preston is going to have to be very alert of that. I think Jacoby Smith is that good, and I think that he's going to shine bright come this event, and I think he's able to get I'm going to say first round finish. I'm being real bold there because Preston, he's tough and he knows how to win, so we'll see. Moving on, we have Thiago Moises versus Trey Ogden. This is an interesting fight. This is an interesting fight to me because, you see a lot of people here leaning towards Thiago Moises. And, Thiago Moises, he's someone 29 years of age. He's been around in the UFC for a while. He's had, the fights with Islam Makhachev. He goes out there, loses to Ludovic Kline. Goes out there, loses to Benoit Saint-Denis. He's losing to some really, really good fighters in the division. I know Saint-Denis has, been struggling lately, but he just fought, Renato Moicano, Dustin Poirier. He's fighting some of the top guys in the weight class. And when Thiago Moises is not fighting one of those guys, he tends to find a way to win, right? He goes out there against Mitch Ramirez, lands some nasty leg kicks, goes out there against Costa, finds the submission, finds another submission against Yagos. So you've seen with Thiago Moises, he knows how to win, man. He's got decent striking on the feet. He's got pretty solid grappling, and he's going in there against a guy at 35 years of age and Trey Ogden, who's starting to hit his stride. And I know that he's 35 years of age, so that tends to maybe worry people at times. But what we've seen from Trey Ogden, I think, is impressive, right? His striking has improved. I'm not saying he's a world beater on the feet. His striking has improved, and he has really, really good grappling of his own. He's got some good submissions, and we've seen that throughout his fights here, right? Goes in there against Daniel Zellhuber. This win has aged pretty nicely, right? Daniel Zellhuber, I think, is a spectacular fighter in this weight class. Goes out there, loses to Ignacio Bahamondes by decision. Not a bad loss, right? Ignacio is one of the better strikers, I think, in the entire weight class. I think he's a very underrated fighter. You saw what he was able to do at the Sphere. Then goes out there against Kurt Holloway. Kurt's a tough dude, right? He had some moments on The Ultimate Fighter, got a little bit of hype to him, and then he comes in. He's a durable guy. He's gritty. He's tough. He moves forward. And then he goes out there against Radzabanov and gets another decision win. So what you've seen from Trey Ogden is he understands how to find a way to win, and that's what we've seen from him recently. And I'm going to be bold. I think Trey Ogden is hitting his stride, and I think with him racking up a couple wins, him being a rangy guy in this weight class. I know he's only 5'11" compared to Thiago, who's 5'9", got a 2-inch reach advantage to work with. I think the striking and the way that Ogden is able to mix things together, I think can somewhat match Thiago Moises. And I think Moises, he's kind of been hot and cold. And while I think Thiago's a good fighter, he's well-rounded, he probably has the better finishing potential, I think Ogden is able to stuff enough of the takedowns, keep the fight on the feet, and if he does get taken down, I think he has enough of a submission threat to pose some threats to Moises where he makes him worried. They get back to the feet, and Ogden can utilize the range and some of the awkward striking on the feet. I think Trey Ogden is able to find himself a decision win in this matchup. This one's close to me. I could see this going either way. I could see Thiago Moises getting it done, but I am going to go with the hot hand right here in Trey Ogden, because with Trey being 35 years of age and where he's at in his career, I think it's now or never for him. I think he's able to find a way to pull this one off. Moving on. We have an interesting fight here between Marco Tulio and Ior Potieria. Now, Marco Tulio, he's a fun guy to watch, man. Fun guy to watch in the middleweight division. Trains over at Shoot to Box, with Diego Lima, Charles Oliveira, those guys. He has that typical Shoot to Box style. The high guard, the very, very aggressive Muay Thai on the front foot, moving forward, backing you up against the fence, big, heavy leg kicks. Likes to just throw big shots at you and try to get you out of there, which is something that does concern me, right? Because we saw in the Contender Series, he goes in there against Duclos. He was basically like, I think he was feeling the moment, right? He's like, it's the Contender Series. I need to do something crazy to get a contract in. I feel like that's what he was trying to do, right? He was throwing all these crazy techniques. I mean, he was winging shots from his hip. He's spinning back kick this, spinning this, spinning that. And that can be a little bit of a concern, because if a guy goes out there and he gets a nasty KO like that and gives himself in a big moment on the Contender Series, does he have that same kind of mindset moving forward in his UFC career? Because if he does that, he's going to open himself up to being countered. And I think Ior Potieria is not the most dangerous guy, but he's technical enough to take advantage of somebody like Marco who will open up a lot. But from what we've seen from Marco, from Marco in his career, this dude's dangerous, right? I saw this fight back with Dos Santos over in LFA. The dude is dangerous, man. He's got crazy power. He's got very, very good jiu-jitsu. So if you're just going to try to take him down, you got to worry about getting submitted from all kinds of different positions. I think Ior Potieria, he's kind of a guy that they're just feeding to Marco in this fight, because coming off a decision loss to Cesar Almeida, coming off of the submission loss to Michel Pereira, I mean, the last win out of these 5 here is against Robert. And it's like, well, where are we here? And then the 2 losses before against Bellato, and then loses to Carlos Ulberg. He's been in there with some good competition, but whenever he fights these dangerous guys, it seems like Ior tends to struggle. And I think that he is going to be very, very cautious in this fight. He's going to have to be, because of the power and the aggressiveness of Marcus Tulio. I think Marco goes in there and is able to find a violent finish. I'm going to say in the second round. I could potentially see a first round finish here, but I think that he's going to be patient. I think he's going to take his time, and he's eventually going to get to Ior Potieria, extend the combinations, wear on that leg a little bit, and is able to find some success with the striking. Maybe he's able to hurt him and then hops on, a neck or something and find a submission that way. That's shoot to box style. It's a problem if you don't have good enough striking or good enough grappling to deal with these guys. I don't think Ior Potieria is anywhere near the level of fighter Marco is. I think Marco is that good. But if Marco comes in, he does not fight intelligent, he tries to just make a highlight the entire time, Ior, I think, is good enough to take advantage of that if Tulio comes in and tries to do that. I don't think he does. I think Marco gets a violent finish that could get him potentially a performance of the night type of bonus. Moving on to the flyweight division, we have Jose Johnson and Felipe Bunes. This is an interesting fight to me because a lot of people are going to lean towards Johnson, right? He's a bigger guy. He's coming down to 125. He's got a crazy frame. I think the biggest frame in the division. He's 6 foot, got a 71.5-inch reach. That's a tall guy, right? But whenever we see guys who tend to struggle at a higher weight class and then they come back down, it doesn't always work out, right? We've seen guys who have a lot of success at 135 and then they drop the flyweight, and I call it the curse. I call it the bantamweight to flyweight drop curse, man. I'm just making that up as we go. But we've seen TJ Dillashaw try to drop the flyweight, Garbrandt try to drop the flyweight. We've seen guys do this, and it just never tends to work out, and they don't have the same success. And I know Johnson was tending to struggle a little bit, and he's basically looking for a little bit of an advantage somewhere. And he's a tall, rangy guy, but he doesn't have much of a range advantage, right? Everyone keeps talking about how Johnson's so big. Well, Felipe can match him in terms of the reach, right? And I know he's a little bit shorter, but I think what we've seen from Johnson, right? He goes out there and he loses to decision against Almeida. Almeida is a good opponent, so I don't really fault him there. Goes out there, finds a win over Chad and Helliger. I don't think Chad's that great, right? So I don't think that that's that great of a win. Goes out there against Damon Blackshear, gets submitted in a twister, and that was a spectacular submission by Blackshear. But if you're getting caught in a twister, I got some questions when it comes to your grappling, right? I don't want to take anything away from Blackshear because it was an outstanding submission, but when you get caught in positions like that, I tend to look at a little bit of a lack of understanding when it comes to the grappling and certain positions and positional awareness. Maybe I'm reaching there, but that's kind of what I think about. And yes, he got a win on the Contender Series, and yes, he stacked some things together, but I think Felipe Bunes, coming off of a loss to Joshua Van. Okay, Joshua Van, I think, is one of the best prospects in this division. He's a ranked guy now. He's been on an absolute tear so far. Outside of the loss to Charles Johnson, who is one of the most underrated guys in this weight class, Joshua Van has been a savage. Okay, so you lose to Joshua Van. Big whoop. You go out there and you get a nasty KO here in LFA. And we've seen from Felipe Bunes, from what I've seen from this guy, he's game. The only thing that concerns me, coming over the UFC at this point, he's 35 years of age. He's got a good team behind him, trains with the Pitbull brothers there. I think Felipe Bunes is actually able to pull off an upset here. I think he's actually able to go in there and find a way to win a decision. I think in terms of the striking, while I think Johnson does have the range and he is pretty good on the feet, I think Felipe Bunes can somewhat match him, and I think that he can incorporate the grappling, push him up against the fence, try to turn it into a more dirty, grimy type of fight. If he could do that, I think Felipe Bunes actually can find a way to win this fight. And being 35 years of age, it's now or never for this guy. I expect him to have a good game plan coming in. I just don't think Johnson's as good as what people think. And I think that whenever you make that drop, man, I said it, remember it. So if Johnson loses, when these guys go from bantamweight down to flyweight, I don't trust picking them, man. It just, for some reason, there tends to be something weird with that. But I think the skill set of Felipe Bunes is a little bit more rounded. I trust him more in this matchup. What we've seen from him prior to getting to the UFC, I know he lost to Joshua Van. That's Joshua Van, man. So again, I think Felipe is able to get back on track and win this one by decision. Moving on to the welterweight division, we have Soriano versus Medish. I think Uros is going to win this fight, and I'm going to be just straight up about this. To me, I don't have a crazy breakdown for this, because with Uros Medic, I think that he's a well-rounded guy, right? He's got good grappling, he's got power on the feet, and in terms of the overall skill set, I just think he's better. And one of the things that we've seen with Soriano, if you watch, the fight with Miguel here, there's moments where it's like Soriano just can't seem to find a finish, right? He goes out there, he wins this fight, loses 2 in a row, gets subbed by Dustin Stoltzfus, gets finished by Roman Kopylov, which Kopylov's, really dangerous and very good. Yeah, he's able to find a finish here. That was 2.5 years ago, right? And then you see this with Uros coming into this fight. He's coming off a nasty finish over Tim Means. Yes, he did get submitted by Orlabai. That's Orlabai. Orlabai is one of the better prospects in this weight class, in my opinion, and then rattles off a couple wins before that. And I think the finishing potential with Uros coming into this fight, it just comes down to he is a better finisher. And I think on the feet, he's got more power, he's more dangerous, and when it comes to the grappling, I think he can, I don't want to say easily, but I think he can pretty handily out-grapple Soriano. So if you're going to ask yourself, where does Soriano win the fight? I really don't know. Unless he's able to find a shot or come in with some crazy game plan. I think Uros Medic is able to go in there. He's able to push the pace, able to mix in the grappling, land some big shots, and eventually catch Soriano with a shot he just doesn't see. I think Medish is able to go in there and get a finish. I'm going to go by third round finish because, again, Soriano is pretty tough, but I think that Uros is just the better overall fighter and has a better finishing threat coming into this one. So I don't expect a whole lot from this fight. I think that I think that Uros is pretty clearly the better fighter, but it's a fight. You never know what can happen. I got Uros getting that one done by finish. Moving on, this is a fight I'm actually really looking forward to here between Austin Bashi and Christian Rodriguez. Austin Bashi, guy coming in with a lot of hype behind him, a guy that I was actually kind of surprised, right? Because he's going to be fighting at featherweight. I'm like, this guy seems kind of small, seems more like a bantamweight to me, but he seems like he's filled out a little bit into his frame, goes in on the Contender Series and gets a nasty submission over Dorian Ramos. And I was like, okay, this dude's legit, right? We knew about the hype of Austin coming in. He's got good grappling, and we got to see prior to getting to the UFC, not just a guy that's taking someone down, holding them, winning a bunch of decisions. He's got a submission threat. He's able to, mix in the ground and pound and knock people out and finish people. He's got really, really good submissions. And I mean, you look at the wins that he's rattling off. This is impressive, right? And then on the other side, you have Christian Rodriguez. And why Christian Rodriguez worries me, because for Austin in this fight is because Christian Rodriguez did something just a few fights ago, goes out there against the highly touted prospect in Raul Rosas Jr. and is able to pull off the upset. And I know that Raul was green at the time. He was new in the UFC, had very good grappling. That's kind of a similar situation to Austin, right? I know maybe Raul didn't come in with the same kind of hype when it comes to the grappling as Austin is, but still, I think that that's something to note. And what we've seen from Christian, he understands how to get these guys out of there. He's got good submissions. He understands how to push a pace, like what he did on Raul, because Raul got very tired. Goes out there, gets a win over Cameron Simon. That's another solid win. Goes out there, gets a split decision win over Isaac Dalgarian, but he's coming off of a submission loss to Julian Erosa. That kind of surprised me. I didn't expect him to lose to Julian in that fight. But when I look at this, to me, this is kind of cut and dry. If Austin Bashi can come into this, he can not gas out, he can mix things together and utilize the grappling like we know he can, I think that he is able to find a submission and get him out of there. If Julian Erosa is finding a submission, I find it hard to believe as long as he doesn't gas with the pace and the way that Austin Bashi is able to operate. I think this guy is that damn good. Like I said, the biggest thing to watch is going to be the gas tank. And if Christian Rodriguez is able to stuff the takedowns, right? Which I would be shocked if he's able to stuff too many. But if he does, I think Rodriguez can give some issues for Austin on the feet. I think Rodriguez is fast. He's got good striking on the feet. But I think that the grappling of Bashi, this guy is a seasoned grappler, man. He's tough. He's, gritty. The way he moves forward, the way that he's able to just, dump guys, man. He's got very, very, very good grappling. I'm high on him. I'm trusting him to get this done. Like I said, the only way I see him losing this fight is if for some odd reason he can't find the takedowns or he gasses himself out, which I don't see that happening. They're going to be in the Apex. There's not a big crowd. I don't think the endorphins and the adrenaline dump will necessarily be the same as what it would be with a big crowd. I think Austin Bashi comes into this calm, composed, and gets a big submission win over C-Rod in this matchup and makes some noise for himself. I think Bashi's that good, man. Moving on to the middleweight division, we have what I think is a very interesting matchup between Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov. This is one of the fights that when this got booked, I was actually kind of surprised the UFC decided to go this route. I thought Chris Curtis, given the fact that he's ranked number 13, maybe they were going to give him a Joe Pyfer type of matchup, someone that the UFC is really trying to build. And I guess to enter Roman Kopylov. And what we've seen from Roman over his past few fights, the guy is very, very dangerous. Goes out there against Cesar Almeida, mixed in the striking, landed some good shots, but it was ultimately the grappling that he barely ever uses. He goes out there and easily was able to take down Cesar Almeida and control him. But we all know Almeida doesn't have good grappling. He has horrible takedown defense, some of the worst in the UFC. He's a very, very good kickboxer, former Glory kickboxer, all those things, which he's on this card actually. But outside of that, he just doesn't have the takedown defense. And Roman Kopylov just absolutely, ran him over with the grappling. I know it was a split decision. Kopylov landed some good shots on the feet, mixed in the grappling. And then before that, goes out there against Fluffy Hernandez. If you wanted to find a horrible matchup for Roman, it would be Fluffy Hernandez. Fluffy Hernandez is a pretty striker's worst nightmare. He's got pressure, pace, he's got solid striking, outstanding submissions, very, very good overall grappling. That is a horrible matchup for Roman Kopylov. And We all know Fluffy Hernandez is a dog man. He has absolutely been on a run inside the division. One of my dark horses in the middleweight division right now. No harm, no foul. Goes out there, rattles off a couple of wins. He's out there finishing just about everybody the UFC puts in front of him. He's a dangerous guy, man. And then on the other side, you got Chris Curtis. He's taken a little bit of time away, got injured in the Brennan Allen fight, goes out there, loses a split decision. I could have seen it going either way, right? I could have seen Chris Curtis getting his hand raised, goes out there against Marc-Andre Barriault. Not a particularly good win here from Chris, right? Split decision over Marc-Andre, not very impressive. Loses to Kelvin Gastelum and then goes out there against Joaquin Buckley, gets it, nasty finish over Buckley. But some interesting things regarding this fight, right? Chris Curtis, who I always say, crybaby Chris, right? He's as sensitive as a nipple on a cold, crisp morning. That's what I always like to say about Chris. He's always whining and complaining about something. He basically said that Roman Kopylov was spying on him. And I'm like, why would anyone be spying on Chris Curtis? The guy's entire MMA career, he's fought the exact same way. He moves forward in a little bit of a Philly shell type of deal, moves forward, likes to box, doesn't mix in a ton of kicks, doesn't utilize a ton of grappling, even though he does have decent offensive grappling. We don't see him mix it in, right? So to spy on Chris Curtis, that would just be flat out silly, right? Chris is not a guy that ever adds any wrinkles to his game. Unless he adds some crazy wrinkles to this game, I think he absolutely gets tuned up on the feet by Roman Kopylov. Kopylov is fast, he's dangerous, he's got more tools, he's got outstanding kicks, good knees, good elbows, good clean hands on the feet. I think he's a problem for Chris Curtis. But we've seen guys at Extreme Couture, right? We've seen Chris Curtis, we've seen Sean Strickland, these kinds of guys that like to box and turn these pretty strikers into, they box them into a phone booth and they make them fight a different kind of fight than they're used to. If Curtis can find a way to do that, mix in some offensive grappling, I could see him posing some issues for Roman Kopylov. And yes, Chris Curtis is durable. Whether you like the guy or not, he's durable. He's a tough guy to get out of there. But I think Roman Kopylov, the speed, the precision, the way he mixes things together, I think he's an absolute problem for Chris Curtis. I think the speed is going to be the most noticeable thing on display. Chris Curtis, almost 38 years of age now. He's kind of been in the rankings towards the back end, fights an up-and-coming guy, loses, wins a close decision. That's kind of been the pattern for Chris Curtis. Roman Kopylov's dangerous. He's fast. He's a very aggressive guy. And if you don't have the grappling to threaten Roman Kopylov for the duration of the fight, he's just going to stand in front of you way too comfortable and be able to just tee off. I think that as the fight plays out, if Chris is not able to mix this up, Kopylov's shots will wear on him, and the speed and the power of Kopylov is dangerous. I think he is able to actually find a finish over Chris Curtis. I'm actually going to bump this up and say in the second round, because I think if it makes it to the third round, maybe that means Chris Curtis has surprised us and mixed in some grappling and tried to do some different types of things. But I think that Kopylov is that good that he's going to be faster. And like I said before, man, speed kills when it comes to a striking battle. And Kopylov is technical. He has some decent grappling of his own. I think that Kopylov is able to win this one. Moving on, we have Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Cesar Almeida. So Cesar Almeida, right, former Glory kickboxer, does hold a win over Alex Pineda. Everybody wants to talk about that. Look, Cesar Almeida is a good striker. He's got good hands. He's got very, very good low kicks. The issues that we've seen from Almeida in the UFC have not been really with the striking, right? He doesn't move his head a lot. He is susceptible to some of those good, clean shots down the middle. But it's been the grappling. It's been when guys are able to, dip underneath, take him down, hold him down, and control him. That is what has given Cesar Almeida a ton of problems. But when do we see the judo thunder, Abdul Razak Alhassan, ever use his grappling? He has good judo. He even teaches judo, I'm pretty sure. He almost never utilizes it in his fights. If he comes in and tries to utilize it, I could see him controlling and holding down Cesar Almeida and causing him some problems. But that's just not the Abdul that we've ever really seen in the UFC. He's a fun fighter. He's basically kill or be killed. Goes in there, he either knocks somebody out or he basically gets finished. He had a close fight with Joaquin Buckley. Goes out there, gets the KO over Claudio Ribeiro, and then gets finished by Joe Pyfer. That's Joe Pyfer. He's one of the most dangerous guys in the division, has crazy power. But what we've seen from Abdul, he likes to move forward. He's got big power. And in the first round, he could put anybody out. But I think Cesar Almeida, what we've seen from him against Ior Potieria, was able to win a decision, loses to Kopylov because of the grappling. And in these other fights, if you don't threaten the grappling and you keep the fight on the feet and you play this back and forth kickboxing type of fight, not many guys are going to be able to beat Cesar Almeida in this weight class. You saw that against Dylan Budka. Budka struggled to get the takedowns. Almeida attacked the legs, beat him up, and that's just what we've seen from Cesar Almeida, is the ability to attack the legs, switch it up on you on the feet, switch stances, move around, attack the legs. Very high fight IQ when it comes to the striking. I actually think he's able to find a finish in this matchup. I think Abdul comes out aggressive. I think he's going to be swinging for the bleachers. And as long as Cesar does not get hit by any of those shots, I think he beats up the legs of Abdul. We haven't seen Alhassan do a very good job addressing leg kicks. I think Almeida will stay at range, bang at that lead leg, hinder the movement, and eventually find a finish later on in the second round is what I'm predicting. But again, if Alhassan comes in with a smart game plan, mixes in the judo, mixes in some of the grappling, I could see him finding some success in this match. But even if he did that, I think he would probably tire himself out. He doesn't have the best gas tank. He's a big, strong guy for the weight class. He relies on the power, relies on being aggressive, almost 40 years of age. I think the technicalities and the way that Almeida beats up the lead leg to hinder the movement, I think it's going to be a problem for Alhassan in this matchup. I have Almeida by finish. This is a banger fight. That's a good matchmaking by the UFC there. Moving on. We'll call this an OG League type of fight. We have Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Carlston Harris. Two guys that are up there in age, two guys that are just, they're kind of towards the tail end now, right? They've kind of done their work, made a little bit of a name for themselves in the division, and now they're just kind of guys, right? They're, Ponzinibbio's doing commentating. Carlston Harris is kind of, going in there, finding some wins, gets the win over Impa, who's now in the PFL, goes out there, loses to Shavkat Rakhmonov, is able to get a win over Jared Gooden, beats Jeremiah Wells. That was a good submission win there, and then loses to Chaos Williams. So whenever, these guys that are a little older, they run into some of these prospects on the rise, that's what tends to be the issue. So Carlston Harris, he's pretty dangerous, right? He's a guy that does have finishing ability. And Santiago Ponzinibbio, right, goes out there, loses to Muslim Salikov by split decision, goes out there, gets finished by Kevin Holland. This was a nice win against Alex Morono, right? Is able to get him out of there. But again, more losses on the side of Santiago Ponzinibbio. But look at the strength of competition, right? The strength of schedule. He's out there against some of the better guys in the rankings in this division. And I think Santiago is one of those guys that if you give him someone a little older, that's a little bit closer to the timeline at where he is in his career, I think Santiago wins those kinds of fights. I think he's got big power in his hands. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's aggressive. And every time Ponzinibbio fights, it's basically an entertaining fight, right? The guy's very entertaining. He understands how to get it done. I think Santiago Ponzinibbio comes into this one and wins a decision in a fun back and forth with Harris. I expect this fight to be close. I don't think that this is going to be one-sided by either guy. Maybe we see a finish at some point here. I think we see some good exchanges, some good back and forths. Both guys kind of get hurt. Both guys get battered. But I think the guy that is more of a dog, the guy that will be able to find a win amidst all the chaos, will be Santiago Ponzinibbio. I have him getting this one done. Last but not least, the main event of the evening. We have Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. This is a rematch, right? And whenever you have rematches, it's very interesting to me because, whenever you get a rematch and it's like, oh, it just happened and we're running it back, we tend to see kind of similar things, and maybe the fight could go a little bit differently than it did the first time. But whenever you see a fight that happened, a few years back, I believe this happened in 2019, so it's been quite some time since we've seen them in there together. What has changed since then, right? That's always what I like to ask myself, right? Well, we have that with Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan. These guys met before, and now they're going to be meeting again. What has changed, right? Those are the things that you have to ask yourself, and that's a similar situation here to with Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. And when I ask myself that question, what has changed here? There's a lot that's changed on the side of Amanda Ribas, right? She has outstanding jiu-jitsu. Her striking has improved. Her durability, her toughness, the way that she's able to mix things together and move forward. She's shown that she is a good fighter inside of the division. And what we've seen from her, yes, she goes out there and loses a split decision. Goes out there, gets a unanimous decision win. Loses by finish to Macy Barber. Barber's one of the better fighters in the weight class, right? Then goes out there against Luana, is able to find a finish, goes out there, loses to Thug Rose. So Amanda's losing to, say, some top flight competition in terms of the division. And then on the other side, we've seen Mackenzie Dern, someone who does have outstanding grappling, very good submissions, very good jiu-jitsu. But since the first time that these women have fought, what is different from Mackenzie, right? I can point out some things that are different from Amanda. I don't really see what's different from Mackenzie, right? She's durable. She moves forward. She throws big looping power shots that don't always land, right? She's got good submissions, good grappling. But what we've seen from her, right? She loses to, Yan Xiaonan, goes out there, beats Angela Hill. That was a pretty good win, right? We saw her. This was where we kind of see the striking look a little bit better. Then she goes out there and gets absolutely obliterated by Jessica Andrade. She took a beating in this matchup. And I don't know why her team kept taking these fights, because then right after that, they're like, give her another power puncher. Throw in there with Amanda Ribas. Almost got finished in this one. She got battered around in this matchup, and I'm like, man, are we ever going to see the same Mackenzie Dern after suffering back-to-back defeats like that? I know she got finished against Andrade and against Lopes. She didn't get finished. She got battered around. Make no mistake about it. Then goes out there against Lupe Godinez. This was a good win, right? Going out there and beating Lupe Godinez, someone who had some hype behind her coming into the fight, that was a solid win for Mackenzie Dern. So it seems like some things are heading in the right direction for Mackenzie, but she's had some personal things going on outside of, fighting, kind of leading into this one that does cause some concern for me, because whenever that happens, it's not to say that it's necessarily going to impact everything, but does that affect your training camp? Does that affect your mentality and your focus coming into the fight? I don't know if it does or not. I'm just pointing that out there. But I think when you look at who's gotten better, who is the better overall fighter and made more improvements at 31 years of age, both of them are 31, I think that it is Amanda Ribas. I think that she is able to go in there, mix things together. I think that she is cleaner on the feet. I think in terms of the grappling, she has the jiu-jitsu. I'm not saying she's better than Dern. I think Dern is better in terms of the overall jiu-jitsu. But this is a fight. This is a mixed martial arts contest. I think overall, Ribas' speed, the way she mixes things together, is going to be a problem for Mackenzie Dern, because with Mackenzie, yeah, the striking's gotten a little bit better, but it's still kind of the same thing. Moves forward, relies on her durability, throws these big looping shots, and takes a shitload of damage. We've seen that in these fights, and there's something to be said about when you take that kind of damage in back-to-back fights. I know she goes out there, finds a win over Lupe Godinez. It still concerns me moving forward coming into this one. I think Amanda Ribas is able to find a decision victory in this fight. Maybe we see someone get a finish. Maybe we see Ribas get a finish. And if Dern's going to win, if she's able to land some good shots, find a submission or something like that, I could potentially see that. But I think the better overall fighter from when they first met, when Ribas won the first time, Ribas has made more improvements. She's got the experience. She's a good fighter. She mixes things well together. I think Amanda Ribas is able to get this one done. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.